What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you a game preview / game prediction for the upcoming 2023 college football season for Week 1's matchup between the Florida Gators and the Utah Utes. A game coming up here in week number 1 next week on Thursday night. Big-time game here between Florida and Utah. It's a rematch from last year, and this is going to be the second game preview for us throughout this week. We got plenty more games to preview and give you more predictions for games and everything. And again, how this video works, if you watch my Notre Dame versus Navy video from yesterday, again, go back and watch that video. And how this works, we're going to give you the stats for both of these teams from last year and see what happened with them from last season as well. And then we're going to give you pretty much the game summary of what the game's going to look like. And also, we're going to give you pretty much keys to the game here for both of these teams, how they can win this game, coming up on August 31st. And then, of course, we'll give you a prediction at the end of this video. So that's how the video works. Again, we're going to be doing these probably every Sunday, perhaps, during the college football season. If it's like a big game or anything like that, we're going to give you that game. So let's get right into it here. We'll start. We're now on Florida versus Utah here. Again, this is a big game coming up here in week number 1. Obviously, both of these teams met last year. Florida came out on top with a win, 29-26, and that kind of ruined, Utah's chances of making the playoff last year. But they still made it to the Pac-12 championship. So here is the stats for both of these teams from last year. Looking at Florida's stats, they were 6-7 overall last year, so they're coming off a very disappointing season. Wouldn't really call it a disappointment. Of course, they made it to a bowl game last year, but overall, it was kind of really, hard to see Florida at 6-6 last year in the regular season. But second-year head coach Billy Napier, how good of this is this Florida team going to be under his second year? You look at the points per game last year; they averaged about 29.5 points per game. Total yards per game, 424.1 yards per game. So that offensive total yard number was pretty high for them last year. Passing yards, 223.8 yards per passing. Rushing yards, they were about 200.2 yards per rushing as well. So the passing and rushing last year was pretty similar. They were both in the 200-yard category for both of those categories and both of those stats. I don't think Florida was really bad on the offensive side of the football last year. I mean, they got better down the stretch, but in that bowl game against Oregon State, it just really wasn't the offense that they were hoping for in that game. And then offensively and defensively in the rankings, they were 37th on offense. So, again, the offense was not too bad last year for Florida. It just really, got a little bit better down the stretch. But, of course, Florida fans don't think it was really a good offense last year. Maybe that offense could be better this year. We never know about Florida. They could be so much better. They could definitely surprise us on the offensive side of the football. Now, defensively, they were not really good last year. 97th in the country. I think this was probably almost one of the worst defenses in the SEC last year. Not really compared to any other teams, but I think Florida was very close to being the worst defense last year. But those are Florida stats. We look at Utah's now. Utah coming off a 10-4 season. Of course, they won the Pac-12 championship. Lost their bowl game, though, to Penn State at the end of the year. They averaged 38.6 points per game last year. Of course, this offense was pretty explosive. You look at the total yards per game, 466.9 yards per total yards per game. Not a big advantage against Florida, but, again, this offense was just really explosive. 249.2 yards per passing. Of course, Cam Rising knows how to get it done at Utah, but he is questionable going into this game against Florida. We'll find out the status about him probably about maybe next week or maybe this week perhaps, but rushing yards number, Utah was about 217.7 yards of rushing last year. So that's a good number there at running the football. This is a team that can run the football pretty well. And then last year they were 17th on offense and 18th on defense. So both offensively and defensively for Utah, they were pretty even in total stats on both sides of the football. I mean, this Utah team is just absolutely loaded with talent, and that's the reason why they just won the Pac-12 championship for the last couple years. So stat comparisons, not pretty similar. I think, the total yards numbers are pretty similar. They're both in the 400-yard category, and then obviously the passing and rushing, there's a big difference there, and then the points per game. But defensively, Utah has the better defense, and then offensively, again, they have the better offense. So those are the stats from last year for Florida and Utah. Moving on to the game summary. And this game's going to be at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, so it's a late-night game. It's going to be on August 31st. This game is on a Thursday night like it was last year, and this will be an ESPN game. 14th ranked Utah against Florida here. Utah ranked number 14 in the AP Top 25, which is very surprising. I do have Utah ranked at number 11 in my Top 25. And they have home field advantage going into this game. This is where the game will be at. Location will be at Salt Lake City, Utah. And then Utah will be, of course, the favorite going into this game. Only by a touchdown, though. They're only a 7-point favorite going into this game. And the over-and-under is at 46. So they're kind of expecting a low-scoring type game here, like it was last year. Of course, Florida came out on top with a win over Utah in that matchup last year. And I kind of expect a low-scoring type game, but I really don't think it's going to be a low-scoring type game. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game than it was last year. Very competitive game like it was last year as well. Of course, it was on the road in Gainesville. Utah, I think, was the favorite going into that game last year, but again, Florida, it's a really tough place to play in Gainesville. But this time, Florida will have to go on the road and face Utah. So again, this game's at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, late-night game, and also on ESPN. And Utah is the favorite, I guess, because of home field advantage. And they're only a touchdown favorite, so it's not like they're favored by double digits going into this game. And this is a potential upset alert type game. Of course, Utah ranked number 14 in the top 25 poll. So, again, we're going to see if Florida can actually pull off an upset. And the over and under is at 46. But let's now get to the keys to the game, keys to victory here to win this game for next week. For Florida, number one key is to force turnovers. That defense is going to have to force turnovers. Obviously the defense was not very good last year. We'll see if the defense is a lot better this year. Number two key is obviously Grant Mertz, the transfer from Wisconsin, has to be consistent. He's going up against a Utah defense that's going to really get him pressure on that side of the football. Grant Mertz just has to be consistent. That's all I can say about the key for, this Florida team to win. And then number three reason is take care of the football. Actually, the third key is to take care of the football for Florida. Last year, Florida kind of, turned the ball over too much. Their defense is going to have to force the turnovers. Their offense is going to have to just take care of the football. So those are the keys to victory here for this Florida team to win against Utah next Thursday night. And then for Utah, it's just to run the football, passing game, and obviously score points. You look at this offense, they are explosive. They can run the football. They can pass the football. We know Cam Rising is questionable going into this game. He's still recovering from that injury that he suffered at the Rose Bowl. If he doesn't play, this game is going to be very competitive. Utah might not score a lot of points in this game. If he does play, I think Utah has probably the advantage to win this game. But again, there's not really much of keys. There's not really much important keys for Utah to win this game. It's just to go out there, run the football, pass the ball, and obviously score points. But there's a lot of keys to win here in this game for Florida, and that's obviously forced turnovers on the defensive side of the football. Graham Mertz just has to be consistent as his first year start as a Florida Gator, and then you got to take care of the football if you're Florida as well. Don't make a lot of mistakes in this game. Let's now get to the prediction now for these two teams. Again, it's Florida versus Utah. This is a Thursday night game on August 31st. The game, how I think it's going to go down, I think the game is going to be very competitive like it was last year. I think both of these teams are going to be once again competitive. Florida, obviously, we don't know the, real question of what they're going to look like yet. But if they do pull off an upset here, Florida is kind of the real deal. That really gives them into the top 25. That's enough for me to put them in the top 25. And if you saw my, preseason top 25, I didn't have Florida ranked in the top 25. If Florida wins this game, I'll probably put them there in the top 25, but we just have to see more from Florida to realize that they are the real deal. But for Utah, they're at home in this game. Home field advantage plays the difference in this one. I think the game is really close in the first half, and I think it goes into the fourth quarter like it did last year. Maybe it's a game-winning drive, but I think Utah is out for revenge in this game. I'm going to say that Utah Utes win this one, and my final score prediction is going to be 30-24. So the game is like it was last year, very competitive going into the fourth quarter, but I think Utah gets revenge on this Florida team and ends up winning here at home against the Florida Gators 30-24. So that's my official game preview and game prediction for the Utah versus Florida game. Again, this game's next Thursday on August 31st. We'll have another game preview / game prediction for you tomorrow right here on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. And stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.